Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Real Legend of Gaming. We are here with Clash Royale, folks, and in today's episode of Everything Royale, we're going to be discussing what our predictions for the balance changes should be. And we're going to do this in a pretty unique way, so we're going to break it down by rarity, and we're going to discuss a couple options for each choice, right? We'll do some nerfs, some buffs for each rarity in the game, and then we'll explain our opinion on why, and obviously we'll continue the conversation through the comment section. So let's check it out, folks. Alright, folks, so now let's check it out. We're going to start with the commons, and we're going to go over the nerfs. Now, some of them are rather obvious because they've been mentioned numerous times in different threads, blogs, Reddit, Twitter, like all the stuff that we use to communicate. I've seen comments about these cards, so it's only right that I start off with them, right? Set the expectation right away. So the cards that should be nerfed inside the common rarity is the Spirit Goblins, right? Reason why I think the Spirit Goblins should be nerfed, because it will indirectly nerf the Goblin gangs along with the Goblin Hut, right? Because the Goblin Hut's been one at the center of a lot of controversy. It's been changed a couple times, but it still is pretty strong. And I think that the general consensus is that the HP is way too high on the Goblin Hut. But if you lower down the HP on the Hut, it might not make it usable anymore, right? And that's always the concern, is that these cards have to have some type of relevancy inside the meta, or at least be used in some decks, right? So by nerfing the Spirit Goblin, you don't necessarily have to worry about the Goblin Hut not being usable inside of a deck. Just those Spirit Goblins will be, slightly affected. Maybe slow down their fire rate, or maybe slow down the spawn rate. Like just little tweaks to it. I'm sure Supercell could figure that out, but I think Spirit Goblins, right? The next one I believe should be changed is the minions. By changing the minions, it will affect the minion horde. Now, one might argue, well, the minions are just fine. The minion hordes are the ones that are a true problem. And I do agree with that argument, right? Because the minion horde is just too strong. It really is. Even if you zap it, you still have a few minions that can attack until your tower attacks maybe the first one or two. And when going up against one of your tanks or any of your other cards, it will still be able to break it down in an insanely fast pace. We can do a couple things, right? You can either maybe take one minion away from the minion horde, but then that will kind of make the elixir cost too high. So that's why I think by doing something to the minion itself, it will indirectly cause an impact on the minion horde, but it will still be, an option that makes sense, because you still will have the horde, aspect of it. So, that's what I think. Now, as far as buffs, the Bomber, who's a pretty good card, like when you're starting the game, but you really don't see him when you get past, I've only been playing Legendary Arena for over a year, or maybe longer. I don't see him at all. And he's a good card. I think he's great for clearing out hordes of troops, especially the spawner troops. He's very good behind a tank, but when you log him, he loses a lot of HP. And again, for 3 elixir, there's so many better options. You got the Goblin Gang, you got the Princess, Ice Wizard. Those are cards that could just easily help out with these hordes. Now, the next card that I think should be buffed, and this one I haven't heard anyone speak about, and I'm going to explain to you why I think it should be buffed, and it kind of has to do with the Dark Prince. So, everybody knows Dark Prince is getting nerfed, right? That's just like an obvious. Now, if the Dark Prince gets nerfed, there's a strong possibility, and again, this is my opinion, that the Hog Rider would become even more popular. Not that he isn't already, but I can see him becoming meta again. And by having the cannon, you guys already know, back in the days, that was a great counter to the Hog Rider. But the cannon is just too weak now. And a couple hits from the Hog Rider, and that thing is done. So I think by buffing the cannon, it will give it some type of relevance once the Hog Rider becomes prevalent in the meta again. And again, just my opinion. Now, we're going to go into the rares. And sorry, I had to write this down and read off a list. Now, as far as the rare cards, I know some people feel that the Ice Golem should be nerfed. I don't think it should. Because at that point, then you'll have no more cheap tanks. So that's why I'm not going to mention Ice Golem, because the Knight was already nerfed. So Ice Golem is another option, which, you know, gives us an opportunity to create a cheap push with, you know, a splash card behind a cheap tank, right? You still need that aspect in the game, especially during single elixir time. Now, the card that deserves to be buffed is the Dark Goblin. The Dark Goblin's attack speed is so good, but man, the Dark Goblin is so weak, right? And when you look at the other goblins, he just doesn't have a place in the meta at all. He was making some type of splash when everybody was using the graveyard. You know, he would fit in the decks. When people were using the Skeleton Barrel, he has some relevancy. But lately, you don't see the Dark Goblin. I really like the Dark Goblin a lot because, again, I think his attack speed is incredible. And if you don't have a princess, you know, you could sub him into the deck, but he's not as strong as a princess. And that's where the problem is. Now, granted, the princess is a legendary, but still, you know, the Dark Goblin is a rare card. It's not a common, so it should be stronger than the other goblins, right? Because those are commons. Now, the next card that I kind of touched on it earlier, but it's the Goblin Hut. So, with the Goblin Hut, originally I wanted to make the argument about lowering the HP on it, but then I realized then it won't really be that good to use because it is an expensive unit. It's 5 elixir. And it's not like it's immediate impact to stop a push, you know, because it just spawns those spirit goblins every couple of seconds. You still have to wait for those goblins to make it past the bridge and then throw one of their spears, you know. So it's not like guaranteed effect on your deck. So I think going back to the first point we made in the video, nerfing the spirit goblins will still keep the Goblin Hut, you know, as an option you can use, but you will see some type of difference, right? It's not going to be like super OP. Now, as far as buffs, we already spoke about the Dark Goblin, and I kind of went all over the place right here. I apologize, folks. But as far as a buff, I think the Wizard needs some type of change, and I'm going to explain why. The Wizard is a strong unit, right? It will melt minion hordes. It does a lot of damage against troops. However, 5 elixir is expensive. And considering that he gets one shot with a fireball most of the times, I don't think he really has value right now. Especially, like, I think the Witch has more value now because she works great with the Night Witch. She works well behind tanks. Her skeletons do a pretty good job. And the Wizard is just too expensive. Now, I don't agree with lowering his elixir cost because then he'll be too strong, right? Because then at that point, he will be a better option than the Hunter. But by changing him slightly, maybe, I don't want to say fire rate because the fire rate is decent. Attack damage is decent. Maybe a slight uptick on HP. So that if you get hit with a fireball, he still has a little bit of life left where he can get in another hit. I think that will make a difference. And then at the same time, people might consider using him instead of using Executioner or the Hunter, or in some cases the Baby Dragon, right? Because the Baby Dragon has a similar effect. So that's just a thought. Now, since we're still talking about fire, I might be the only person in the world who has this sentiment, but the Fireball needs to get nerfed. It really does. And I'm going to explain to you why. The Fireball can single-handedly take out an entire push you have behind your tank. So let's say you're stacking behind your Golem or your Giant Skeleton or even a Mega Knight. This Fireball could take out Ice Wizard, Musketeer, Wizard, Magic Archer, Hunter, Baby Dragon. Like, I could continue going. It would just take them out. All of them. At the same time. And I think that's crazy. Because when you look at a card that costs 2 elixir more, which is the Rocket. The Rocket's radius is so small, you'll get lucky if you're able to get 2 troops at once. And this is why I think with the Fireball, adjusting the radius will be a great move. Because the Fireball still will be good, because he can still do late damage, late game damage against a tower. He still can clear out a push, but decreasing that radius slightly, I think it will be great. And I didn't even mention the fact that this Fireball also could take out most of the damage from an Elixir Collector and hit the tower at the same time. Now come on, Elixir Collector is 6 elixir. Thing is expensive. And then the Fireball is only 4. So those are just my thoughts on it. And I hope that after I explain that, you guys can understand my reasoning. Because I know on the surface, it's a crazy thought. But once you explain it, it might not be that bad. Alright, so now we're going to go into the epics. The epics actually have a lot of cards that needs to be nerfed. And most of them are obvious, right? And I'm not going to go too crazy explaining them. But we already know the poison. Same reason for the Elixir Collector that I use with the Fireball. But poison just does too much damage. It's OP. I think the same thing. Lower the radius. Make it smaller. A little slightly. Tornado. My favorite spell in the game. But I gotta face the facts. It's OP. The fact that it could draw in the troops. Making it easier for your double Prince combo to just destroy. Or your splash troops. Is incredible. The fact that it can activate the King's Tower with almost any card that you're able to pull to the King Tower is real strong too. So it has a lot of value. I mean, it's a great card. And I think the argument's the same thing. I think most of the spells need tweaks on the radius, just about. Now, the cards that need to get buffed, well, I apologize. In Double Prince, we already know that. I'm not going to go into specifics. Prince and Dark Prince nerf. They're too OP. They're like in every deck. They rule in the meta. I'm having fun with them. You saw the decks that I'm using. I'm using that Golden Double Prince. And I'm having fun and I'm enjoying it while it lasts. Now, I think the Bowler needs a buff. Because, again, you need some tanks. And the Bowler just doesn't have any use right now because you can go with another option. You can go with Executioner and be okay and still be able to attack air. You can go with a Hunter and still be able to attack air. The Bowler just rolls those ground troops, but people aren't really playing Graveyard anymore anyway. So the Bowler needs a buff, maybe increases HP, or maybe increases rate where he rolls the ball a little faster, but he needs a change. And then the next buff, I believe, is the Cannon Cart. This goes back to my reason around Dark Prince and Prince being nerfed. I think the Hog Rider is going to make a crazy comeback. And I still think people are going to use the Dark Prince and decks. I don't expect it to go down drastically because they're still good. And those Golden Double Prince decks are still good. So by making the Cannon Cart a little bit stronger, I think it will work out. And then also, if the Bowler gets stronger, again, it will help out a little bit. And then last but not least is the Legendaries. Everybody can agree on this. The Princess needs to be nerfed. How? I'm not too sure because she's only 3 elixir. She's really weak. You can just log her most of the time. Unless you have unless she's over leveled. But generally you could just log her. So I think maybe again, and I think it comes down to radius for a lot of these things. Lowering down her blast radius could be an option, or maybe slowing down her fire rate, but I think her fire rate's already slow. So figure out a way to make that work, but she needs a nerf because she's just super popular, super cheap. And by changing her, maybe more people will start using a Dark Goblin, but let's see how that works. And then as far as buff, I think the Magic Archer needs a buff. He's a cool card. Excellent concept. I just love the way he functions, but you just don't see him enough. And it could be a combination of people not having him yet or not being able to unlock him or upgrade him, but you don't really see him a lot. And he's super weak. One fireball, he's done. A log, he loses a lot of HP. So I think a buff to HP would really help him out. All right. So folks, that's pretty much it. Those are my choices for nerfs and buffs for the next balance changes. I'm sure most of them are going to be done because a lot of the cards that I mentioned are popular choices. But I do hope that some of the ones that were not meta decisions do get affected as well. All right? As always, folks, I appreciate the support. If you do enjoy this video and these type of videos, then slap the like button and leave a comment down below, because I'm trying to create more Clash Royale content for you guys. But, you know, being able to do videos like this will definitely help out because it allows me to express myself and also gives us an opportunity to exchange ideas and communicate. All right. So, other than that, folks, appreciate it always. Peace out.